Imagine, if you will, just the absolute dream coworker.
Oh, mythical perfect employee.
Right, exactly. We were talking about that one senior engineer who, grabs a virtual coffee, sits down at their desk, and just grinds autonomously for hours.
Without ever losing focus.
Yeah, without losing focus. They don't get distracted. They do not need to be micromanaged. But here is the real kicker, the thing that makes them a true unicorn in the professional world.
Who is that?
They actually have the humility to look you in the eye and honestly say, I am not entirely sure about this variable, or, hey, I made a mistake on that last line of code. Let me just fix it.
Which is, I mean, it's a rare and beautiful thing, both in human colleagues and especially, historically speaking, in artificial intelligence.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if we're being honest, we have spent the last few years dealing with the exact opposite of that.
Yeah, that's for sure.
We have been working with these AI systems that sound incredibly, almost, aggressively confident, even when they are entirely factually wrong.
Which is exactly why we are gathered here today. So welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission for this session, for you, the listener, is to completely unpack the launch of Anthropic's Claude Opus 4.8.
A huge release.
Right. This just dropped on May 28th, 2026. And we are really trying to figure out the big question on everyone's mind right now. Are we finally witnessing the end of, the chatty chatbot era?
Yeah, the basic back and forth stuff.
Exactly. Is this the actual dawn of truly autonomous, reliable AI agents?
That is the pivotal question right now. I mean, the entire industry is trying to determine if we have finally crossed that threshold from, a fun novelty to genuine unsupervised utility.
And to figure that out, we have a massive stack of sources in front of us today.
A very tall stack.
We're looking at the verified announcements, the official system cards, independent benchmarks, and Anthropic's technical reports on this new release.
Lots of dense material.
But, as always, we are making a promise to you. We are skipping the heavy academic jargon. We're going to focus entirely on how these systems actually work under the hood.
And what this release actually means for your daily workflow.
Because the shift here isn't just about, throwing more raw computational power at a server rack somewhere.
No, not at all. What is fascinating here is the pivot in philosophy.
Right.
Anthropic has essentially decided that raw intelligence is completely useless if you cannot trust it. And that brings us to what they are calling the killer feature of Opus 4.8.
Which is surprisingly honesty.
Yeah, honesty.
So honesty, let's start right there. Because what does that actually mean for a machine? I mean, we aren't talking about a conscience here.
No, it's just software.
Right, it's software.
Yeah.
So how does an algorithm actually behave honestly?
Well, it is not a moral framework, right? It is a structural one.
Yeah.
Historically, the biggest roadblock for large language models, or LLMs, has been hallucinations.
Where the AI just confidently invents facts.
Exactly. Or, it makes up code libraries that literally do not exist. So to combat this, Anthropic pioneered an approach called constitutional AI.
Constitutional AI.
Yeah. Mechanically, they give the model a foundational set of rules like a constitution. When you ask Opus 4.8 a question, it doesn't just spit out the first statistically likely string of words.
So what does it do instead?
In the background, before you ever even see the text, it drafts an answer. And then a secondary internal process critiques that draft against its constitution. It actively verifies its own outputs.
Wait, really? So it is essentially like fact-checking itself in a hidden scratchpad before it hits send to the user.
Exactly. It evaluates its own proposed response. And if it realizes the data is shaky, or if it simply cannot verify the information within its training parameters, it is explicitly programmed to admit uncertainty.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it corrects its own errors internally before presenting the final result to you.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I am a bit skeptical here.
Fair enough.
If a model is programmed to be hyper-honest and it's constantly double-checking itself, doesn't that just make it like a timid AI?
How do you mean?
I mean, if I am trying to solve a really complex coding problem, I don't want an assistant that constantly freezes up and replies, I don't know, or I'm not sure, just to protect its own accuracy score.
Right, yeah.
Is there a line where honesty just becomes unhelpful paralysis?
That is a brilliant point, and it is the exact tension researchers have been wrestling with for years. There is actually a technical term for what you were describing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is called over-refusal. It's where the safety rails are so high, the model basically becomes paralyzed and just refuses to do the work.
Right, which is useless.
Exactly. But what the data on Opus 4.8 suggests is that Anthropic has achieved a much better calibration of uncertainty rather than just timidity.
How so? Like, what is the mechanical difference there?
It is about granularity. Instead of just saying, I don't know, and giving up entirely, Opus 4.8 isolates the specific point of failure.
Okay, so it gets specific.
Yeah. It says, I can build the architecture for this database, but I have a low degree of confidence in this one specific routing variable. Let me ask you for clarification on that piece.
Oh, I see.
It is the difference between a junior employee freezing up in total fear and a seasoned senior engineer saying, I've drafted the deployment, but let's double-check the server documentation on this one specific module before we push it live.
Right, that makes total sense.
It is about having the judgment to know when to push forward and exactly when to pause.
Which, you really can't have autonomy without trust. You simply cannot let an AI run a massive, unsupervised task for hours if you think it might quietly hallucinate a critical piece of infrastructure.
It would be a disaster.
Complete disaster.
Yeah.
And from the technical reports we are looking at, Opus 4.8 is built specifically for those massive, unsupervised tasks.
It really is.
For starters, it defaults to a 1 million token context window. Let's actually define that real quick. We hear the word token thrown around constantly. What actually is a token, and why does a million of them matter to the user?
So think of a token as a fragment of a word, or sometimes just a short word itself. It is the basic unit of data the AI reads and generates.
Okay.
The context window is the AI's active working memory for that specific conversation. It is a lot like the RAM in your computer.
Right, short-term memory.
Exactly. If an AI has a small context window, by the time it gets to the end of a long, complex task, it has completely forgotten the instructions you gave it at the very beginning.
It just loses the plot entirely.
It really does. So 1 million tokens translates to roughly 750,000 words.
That is massive.
To put that in perspective for you, you could drop 50 massive PDF financial reports, an entire library of legal case law, or even a sprawling software code base right into its active memory all at once, and it retains all of it.
And the benchmark scores they're hitting with this expanded memory are significant. I mean, on SWE Bench Verified, which is a benchmark that tests how well an AI can solve real-world, historical software engineering issues from GitHub, it is scoring around 88.6%.
That's just huge for that test.
Right. And on Online Mind2Web, which tests how well an AI can autonomously navigate and interact with web browsers, it is hitting 84%.
Impressive numbers.
Yeah, and it's also leading in Terminal Bench. This basically means it is surpassing its predecessor, Opus 4.7, and it is currently leading major competitors like GPT 5.5 and Gemini 3.1 Pro in very specific coding evaluations.
Yeah, it's taking the lead.
But, what do these numbers actually represent in the real world?
Well, what these benchmarks show is a monumental shift in how we interact with machines. If we look at the trajectory of large language models, for a long time, human beings were merely prompting an AI.
Like typing a question into a box.
Exactly. You ask a question, you get an answer. It was a ping-pong match.
Yeah.
But high scores on SW Bench and Mind2Web represent a shift from prompting to delegating.
Delegating.
Right. You aren't asking it to write a single function anymore. You are delegating an entire multi-step workflow to it, and you're expecting it to manage the intermediate steps itself.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because Anthropic is trying to operationalize that delegation. They introduced this new feature in Claude Code called dynamic workflows.
Yes. Dynamic workflows.
And mechanically, it is a wild concept. Think of Opus 4.8 as a master project manager. You give it a massive task, like, say, migrating an entire legacy code base to a new programming language.
A massive headache for humans.
Oh, total nightmare. But Opus looks at the task, drafts a plan, and autonomously spawns hundreds of temporary virtual contractors, these subagents, to work in parallel.
This is the realization of what researchers call the agentic swarm concept.
Break that down for us. What is actually happening in the swarm?
So you have a main orchestrator model. Its only job is to parse your overarching goal. It takes that giant task and breaks it down into a highly detailed tree of smaller subtasks.
Okay, so it makes a plan.
Right. Then it spins up temporary parallel instances of itself, and it gives each instance a highly specific system prompt.
Like giving them different jobs.
Exactly. One subagent is told, you are a specialist in translating database calls. Another is told, you are a QA tester looking for syntax errors. Another is updating the user interface.
That is wild.
And the master Opus model orchestrates their back-and-forth communication, synthesizes all their work, and compiles the final product.
But wait. Doing all that, having hundreds of AI instances talking to each other, reading code, compiling it, fixing errors, That must take a massive amount of processing power and time.
Oh, it does.
It sounds incredibly computationally heavy.
It is very heavy. And that is exactly why Anthropic introduced another structural feature called effort control.
Effort control.
Yeah. Mechanically, this allows you to adjust how much hidden reasoning time or, compute cycles the AI is allowed to use on a task. You can actually toggle the effort between low, medium, and high.
So how does that actually change the output for the user?
Well, in the AI world, we use a concept called chain of thought processing. When you set the effort to low, the model gives you a direct, immediate front-of-brain answer.
Just a quick reaction.
Right. It is fast, and it uses minimal compute. It is great for, say, summarizing an email chain. But if you are having it refactor critical security infrastructure, you dial the effort up to high.
So you tell it to think harder.
Exactly. You are explicitly instructing the model to take its time, break the problem into sequential steps, verify each step internally, and perhaps even run multiple parallel calculations before it outputs the final answer.
That makes a lot of sense.
You are basically trading off speed and compute cost in exchange for high-quality, deeply reasoned output. Plus, they rolled out a fast mode that optimizes the routing, so the model is 2.5 times faster and up to 3 times cheaper for those lower effort tasks.
Okay, so we have these massive benchmark scores, this army of honest subagents, and granular control over how hard the AI thinks. But we have to ask, what does this actually do for you, the listener, sitting at your desk on a Tuesday afternoon?
Right, the practical application.
Exactly. High benchmark scores are great for researchers in a lab, but let's talk about real-world fiction and real applications.
The applications are incredibly varied depending on your industry. For professional developers, it is all about massive automated code refactoring.
Changing the underlying structure.
Yes, it is an AI that doesn't just autocomplete a line of Python, but actually thinks like an engineer.
Yeah.
Because of that massive context window we talked about, it can anticipate how changing a variable in one file will break a hidden dependency in a completely different file on the other side of the system.
And for professionals outside of tech like lawyers or financial analysts, the appeal is that foundational honesty we talked about earlier.
Lack of hallucinations.
Right. You can have the AI review a 500-page merger agreement or, a decade of quarterly earnings reports and actually trust the analysis. You don't have that lingering fear that when it flags a problematic clause, that clause was just dreamt up by the language model.
Exactly. It's game-changing for trust. Perhaps the most culturally fascinating application emerging from this specific release is something the community is calling vibe coding.
Yes. I have seen the word vibe coding floating around online, and frankly, it sounds a little bit like a marketing gimmick.
It does sound silly.
What is vibe coding actually doing under the hood?
Well, it sounds casual, but the mechanics behind it are profound. Vibe coding is essentially using natural conversational prompts to generate complex software,
Like what kind of software?
like interactive data dashboards or even functioning video games, without writing a single line of traditional syntax yourself. You just describe the logic, the rules, and the vibe of what you want the application to do.
Hence the name.
Exactly. The AI acts as the translator between your natural language and the machine code. But the magic with Opus 4.8, because of its autonomous agentic structure, is that while it builds the app, it attempts to run the code, encounters an error, reads the error log, and autonomously fixes its own bug before it even presents the final product to you.
So what does this all mean? Does this mean someone who absolutely does not have a computer science degree, could literally sit down, vibe code a complex personal finance application from scratch, and Opus 4.8 will act as both my lead builder and my QA tester?
In theory, yes. We're witnessing a massive democratization of computational power.
That is incredible.
It really is. You're no longer gated by knowing where the semicolons go in JavaScript. However, this is where we have to take a step back and apply some realism here.
Okay, lay it on me.
While Opus 4.8 can act as your builder and your QA tester, it cannot act as your human judgment. I strongly encourage you to keep your critical thinking sharp here.
Meaning, I still need to know what I am building.
Precisely. The AI is a powerful collaborator, but if you do not understand the fundamental architecture of a secure database, you will not know if the AI just built you a beautiful functioning house of cards.
Oh, wow. That's a great point.
You still have to guide the logic and validate that it is serving your actual needs safely.
Which is a perfect transition, because building a custom app or migrating a code base with an army of AI subagents sounds indistinguishable from magic. But magic has a literal price tag,
It always does.
and it comes with real-world limitations. So let's talk about the catch.
The first catch is, unsurprisingly, the cost. Anthropic is keeping the pricing at $5 per million input tokens and $25 per million output tokens.
Okay.
Now, on the surface, compared to human labor, that might sound reasonable.
Wait, hold on. I need to pause you right there because my brain is doing some very basic math right now.
Uh-oh.
If I tell my AI to build an app using dynamic workflows, and it spins up, say, 50 of these subagents, and they are all reading error logs, writing code, checking each other's work, and iterating, aren't I paying for every single one of those interactions?
Yes, you are.
Am I paying for 50 AIs talking to each other in an invisible background loop? Because that sounds like a fast track to a massive API bill.
You hit the nail on the head. The token burn rate on autonomous loops is exponential compared to simple prompting.
Exponential.
Yeah. When you are just chatting with an AI, you use a few hundred tokens. When an agentic swarm is working autonomously for 3 hours, it is burning through millions of tokens rapidly.
That is terrifying for my wallet.
It can be. Even with that new fast mode optimizing the cheaper tasks, scaling this kind of autonomous workflow is still highly expensive for everyday individuals or small startups.
And what happens if it gets stuck? I mean, if we let Opus run these autonomous workflows, aren't we risking an astronomical bill if the subagents just get caught in an endless loop?
That is a very real fear.
Like, what if they just keep failing a unit test and retrying the exact same broken code for 3 hours?
This raises an incredibly important question about how we actually measure trust in a production environment. Anthropic claims that the model's foundational honesty and self-correction will prevent those endless loops.
Will it, though?
Well, the idea is that it will recognize when it has reached a dead end, admit uncertainty, and stop to ask the human for help. But trusting an AI to self-arrest while it holds the keys to your API budget is a major leap of faith.
It is the difference between passing a test in a lab and surviving the real world.
Exactly. Real-world usage is already showing that an AI's performance can vary wildly. The sterile, perfectly documented environment of a benchmark test like SWE Bench doesn't always map perfectly to the messy, undocumented, duct-taped reality of a company's legacy enterprise system.
And let's not forget the broader context here either. The AI race is moving at breakneck speed.
It really is.
Opus 4.8 is an incredible structural achievement today, but rivals are constantly advancing, constantly tweaking their own architectures. And Anthropic's own next-generation model, the heavily rumored Claude Mythos, is already visible on the horizon.
It's moving so fast.
The ground is constantly shifting beneath our feet. We're trying to build foundations on an earthquake.
Which is why ongoing human oversight, education, and adaptability are absolute necessities. We have to warn against overconfidence here. Just because Opus 4.8 is objectively more honest and more capable of managing its own workflows doesn't mean we can just fall asleep at the wheel. We have to learn how to manage these agentic systems with the same scrutiny and oversight we would apply to a team of human contractors.
So, to bring it all together for you today, what we're looking at with Claude Opus 4.8 isn't necessarily a radical, out-of-nowhere reinvention of the wheel.
No, not a reinvention.
Instead, it is an incredibly vital evolution of the vehicle itself. It is a tangible improvement that really cements Anthropic's long-term strategy in this space.
Absolutely.
They aren't interested in just building chatty, entertaining companions that give you fun recipes. They are building mature, self-correcting, and highly capable agentic AI.
It is a tool engineered for profound utility. By leaning into honesty and effort control, it empowers you to take on complex, multi-step projects that might have been technically or financially out of reach just a year ago.
Which is incredibly exciting.
It is. We absolutely encourage you to use these democratized tools, innovate with them, learn how to manage an agentic swarm, and experiment with concepts like vibe coding to bring your ideas to life.
But as always, keep that critical thinking sharp. Do not outsource your judgment. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over on your own.
A parting thought.
Yeah. We started the session by comparing Opus 4.8 to that dream senior coworker, the one with the honesty to admit mistakes, the self-correction to fix them, and the collaborative spirit to get the job done autonomously.
An artificial model fundamentally engineered to mimic our absolute best professional traits.
Exactly. So if AI models are now successfully being engineered to mimic a senior professional's honesty, their work ethic, and their ability to manage complex workflows, oops. I mean, if they can manage all of that so well, will the most valuable human skill of the next decade simply be knowing how to ask the AI the right questions to get it started?
That's a heavy question.
Or, as these agents become increasingly autonomous and more deeply integrated into our digital and financial lives, will our greatest skill simply be knowing exactly when to pull the plug?
A question we will all have to answer sooner than we think.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious out there.